Silence! Were you talking to them? Were you talking to my client without his lawyer present?
And you are?
Hey guys, Kiwi here. In this video, we'll be breaking down Hank and Gomez making a cameo appearance in Better Call Saul Season 5, Episode 3.
Hey, Marina. How's the boy?
Which is actually Saul Goodman's very first time ever meeting them. Warning is spoilers for Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul up to Season 5, and let's jump right into this. So this was a huge moment for the Breaking Bad fandom. This episode answered questions that we've speculated about for years. In order to explain what I'm talking about,
We got a lot to go over here.
I wanted to quickly preface it with the first time we ever saw Hank and Saul on screen together, which was during Saul Goodman's very first episode of Breaking Bad, Season 2, Episode 8, titled Better Call Saul. In Saul's very first episode of the Gilliverse, he's called to action defending Badger thanks to Walt and Jesse. He ends up going against Hank and Gomez, just like in Better Call Saul 503. In both episodes, we see Saul defend a drug dealer against Hank and Gomez. In many ways, Better Call Saul 503 pays homage to Saul's original episode. 503 actually confirms a long theorized mystery within the Breaking Bad universe that Saul and Hank actually had known each other beforehand. The way that they met in Breaking Bad makes it seem like they're acquainted, but not much more. The way that the scene plays out purposely leaves this open for interpretation.
Anything you care to share with me?
Sure, your commercials, they suck ass.
And so in Better Call Saul, they ran with it. Now, I don't remember exactly which interview this was said in, or I'd put the clip here, but apparently some of the writers for Better Call Saul went back and rewatched that same scene from Breaking Bad that we've all theorized about so much. After the writers and creators rewatched that old scene, they had to make a call themselves if Saul had known Hank beforehand and if they could work that into it. So as it turns out, it seems like they left it ambiguous for a reason, and there was never an answer until recently when they went back and looked at it and decided to go with it. Now, with that out of the way, let's jump right into the full 503 Hank meets Saul breakdown.
Let's get this circle jerk over with.
Saul was hired by Lalo and Nacho in order to defend Crazy 8. Crazy 8 was only arrested due to those two druggies binging away all their money, and that only happened because they got the twisted idea from Saul's 50% off scheme, so in a way, this indirect domino effect was all Saul's fault, and now he's coincidentally forced to pay the consequences for it. Oh, how I love the way the show just comes full circle sometimes. Anyways, Crazy 8 walks in to speak with Saul Goodman, and this is where the hype really starts to pick back up again in the episode.
Who the hell are you?
Crazy 8 acts confused because he never hired a lawyer. Saul tells him that Lalo was the one who hired him. Crazy 8 gets concerned, stating that he's never snitched about anything regarding their business.
I didn't say anything to no one. I kept my mouth shut.
I know. Don't worry, kid. I'm nothing but good news for you.
Saul more or less just tells Crazy 8 to chill out and that him being there is good news. Lalo wanted Saul in a room with Crazy 8 alone to speak with him and give him required information to get him out of custody.
You're the guy for this.
Saul slides over a notepad with a scheme created by Lalo and Saul for Crazy 8 to memorize, and so their scheme begins, although it does not go their way. Since this marks the first appearance of Hank and Gomez in Better Call Saul, let's just go ahead and give our appreciation for the way that their cameo was revealed. So I love the way that they reveal them by showing just about every single other part of them first, before finally revealing their faces. First off, they show the license plate to their vehicle, then Hank's big giant gut and the type of shirt that he'd wear, and then we see his big bald head before finally showing his face and name as he slaps his ID across the glass, followed by Gomez as well. And then there's the whole back and forth small talk with Hank and Gomez bickering about Marie and expired food as they're putting their weapons away.
As the clock literally strikes midnight, Marie hands me a full hefty bag and pushes me out to the trash cans. I mean, most of it's still good. What the hell?
Although Marie isn't shown on screen, which, makes sense, they're at work, it's nice hearing her name mentioned, which makes the Breaking Bad Better Call Saul Venn diagram overlap just that much more. It'd be really cool to have Marie cameo as well in Season 6 or something, but I'm not sure what they could do with her character. To stand on a soapbox for a second, the Breaking Bad Better Call Saul creators have a philosophy, you could say, where they only bring back characters if they serve a certain purpose. So for example, they wouldn't bring back Walt and Jesse in Season 6 just to walk past Saul on the sidewalk as a little funny ha-ha moment. They want cameos to serve a purpose for the plot that they're involved in, along with the overall story.
You're really lucky, you know that.
You didn't have to wait your whole life to do something special.
They did an amazing job giving Hank and Gomi purpose for their Better Call Saul cameos, which is why they even brought them back. They were originally just going to have two no-name cops versus Saul and Crazy 8, but then they thought up the great idea of just how much of a perfect fit Hank and Gomez would be, and luckily the actors were more than happy to reprise their roles, since they're told that they'd be playing younger, more happy and cheerful versions of themselves before all that depressing stuff happens with Hank in Breaking Bad. Now, as I said, since Hank and Gomez are at work, it makes sense that we don't see Marie. Could they think of a cameo for Marie that would actually serve a purpose and be more than just her going and saying hi to Hank? Let me know in the comments below. Okay, stepping down from the cameo and Marie soapbox now. If you have any fruitful Marie theories, let me know, but enough about Marie. This video is about Hank and Gomez. Can't forget him. Now, Hank and Gomez make me laugh, just in general, from their small talk about expired foods.
Once I found an old can of vanilla frosting. I ate that. I'm still here.
You what?
During the beginning of the reveal for Hank and Gomez, Saul is shown standing across the street outside waiting for them to arrive so that they have a chance to start talking to Crazy 8 alone. This is to make it seem like Crazy 8's going to cooperate before Saul walks in and tries to stop it all. It was all a part of their plan for Crazy 8 to talk to Hank and Gomez alone first and then have Saul barge in momentarily. This is yet another callback, an Easter egg you could say, to Saul's original episode. Both scenes begin with Saul barging into his client getting interrogated alone, causing Saul to try and kick them out so he can speak to his client without them there. Only difference is that during the Breaking Bad scene, Saul legitimately wanted him to leave, but in episode 503, Saul is trying to manipulate them. Another Easter egg in this scene would be that Hank and Gomez intimidate Crazy 8 the same manner that Tuco and Nacho intimidated Crazy 8 previously in Better Call Saul 204, in order to try and tell if he's lying or not. In addition, Hank is sitting on the exact same side of the table, bearing the same deadly suspicious look at Crazy 8 as Tuco previously had done, which I just find it funny to compare the two considering the way that Tuco's fate involves Hank. Now, before Saul barges in, we actually see Hank and Gomez first speaking to Crazy 8 alone. Hank gives a bunch of exposition in an interesting way that seems like he's giving Crazy 8 a hard time for suddenly deciding to talk. He says that Crazy 8 got arrested for a half ounce of drugs, while Gomez adds that that's dealing weight. They continue explaining how Crazy 8 was quiet during the first 2 nights of detainment, but then suddenly he had an epiphany and wants to talk. Hank and Gomi are suspicious of Crazy 8 for suddenly having a change of heart, randomly deciding to call them in and speak with them. Crazy 8 obviously did this in order to execute Saul and Lalo's plan, but Hank and Gomi are already onto them instantly. They already know that he's probably up to something, but they just don't know what yet.
Domingo Molina picked up for possession a half ounce of street-grade gack.
That's dealing weight.
Keeps his mouth shut for the first 2 nights he's in here and now has an epiphany and wants to talk. Okay. Wow me. Make my tiny eyes grow wide with delight.
In my opinion, this exposition is a great way to inform the viewers of what's going on. We're not just force-fed information, at least it doesn't feel like it to me. Hank is putting pressure on Crazy 8 continuously just throughout the entire scene, acting like Crazy 8 wasn't worth their time, and that he's lucky that he's even talking to them, so he better impress them. It's a great intimidation tactic to get him to just be straightforward with them and come clean. So Crazy 8 begins to pitch.
What if I know where there's $500,000 in drug money?
What if? What if?
This actually has significance for episode 504, the second part of Hank and Gomi's cameo, but Hank pretty much tells Crazy 8 to rat out everything that he knows about the operation or no deal. They imply that the money is a good start, but that they want more information to catch who is handling the money and drugs so that they can shut down the criminal activity completely. Crazy 8 starts explaining the debt drops to Hank and Gomez in order to get them to believe that it's a big operation, and then Saul walks in right on cue. This right here, this big moment, I love it and can't get enough of. Saul Goodman introduces himself to Hank, and Hank is the first person ever on screen, I believe, to actually realize and acknowledge the pun in Saul's name.
And you are?
Saul Goodman. I'm Mr. Molina's attorney, and you're in violation of his constitutional rights.
It's all good, man. Really? Come on, that's your name?
Hank laughs at him for it, practically rolling his eyes at him. I'm sure I don't need to explain this, but, just in case. The name Saul Goodman is an alias that Jimmy used to use as a con man, based off of the saying, "It's all good, man."
Bro, I never did catch your name.
Saul.
Saul?
Saul good, man. Get it?
I do. All right, Saul.
And yes, now anytime that someone says that saying to me in real life, I instantly think of Saul. Anyways, I just love that the first time they talk to each other, the first things they say back and forth is just pure gold. And it's that gold that answers the long-awaited question of, did they know each other beforehand? And I just wanted to double down and emphasize how big of a deal this was to the fandom. We always suspected that Hank and Saul knew each other previously, but we couldn't tell if they ever actually met or if Hank had just seen Saul's commercials before. Since Saul's commercials came out after they met during Better Call Saul, it makes sense that Hank would comment on them when they finally met again. Hank also makes fun of Saul's commercials in a similar fashion to the way that he makes fun of his name in Better Call Saul. It seems like Hank always has to mock Saul somehow whenever they meet, which makes sense, you know, they're butting heads, but to be fair, Saul kind of has it coming with the whole low-budget criminal lawyer persona. Saul notices their DEA badges and gives them a hard time about it, most likely due to being annoyed that Hank just made fun of his alias.
Oh, the DEA. Oh, I see. Okay, the feds. Well, what, they don't teach the Constitution at Quantico these days?
Yeah, Quantico is FBI.
I don't care. DEA, FBI.
When Saul does this, he says something related to FBI agents and not DEA, and they actually call him out on it. With that passive-aggressive attempt at mocking being unsuccessful, Saul tries brushing it off and moving on. I love this moment as well. It shows that although he is turning into the Saul Goodman that we know from Breaking Bad, he's not quite professionally there yet. And this is a theme with all the reoccurring characters in Better Call Saul from Breaking Bad. Obviously, we're seeing them at a younger date, years beforehand, so they're all still learning the ropes. And on that note, it's interesting to see Saul still make a few mistakes here and there during his speech, and that he still has a few flaws and kinks to work out. Breaking Bad Saul would have been less likely to ever slip up like that.
I promise you this, I will give you the best criminal defense that money can buy. 80,000 and 1 pound of your finest meth.
As the scene goes on, Saul and Crazy 8 are pretending to butt heads, with Crazy 8 wanting to talk to the DEA and Saul wanting to prevent it at all costs. They pretend to argue, standing up in the corner having a semi-private conversation right in front of Hank and Gomez, who just sit there and watch, pretty unamused. They end up pretending that Crazy 8 wants to go against his lawyer's advice, but Hank and Gomez don't buy it. Saul finally sits down and agrees to let Crazy 8 talk, but Hank and Gomez are too smart to fall for a play like this, and they decide to walk. At this point, Saul realizes that his scheme isn't working, and he cuts to the chase, being as straightforward as possible.
I feel like my chain is being jerked, and not in a good way, if you know what I'm saying. We're doing it here.
Guys, what if we say it's contingent?
Saul throws all the cards on the table by asking if their plan can be contingent.
Contingent?
Hank and Gomez ask what it'll be contingent on, and Saul says a result. Saul explains that Hank and Gomez will go prove that Crazy 8's information is correct, and he'll be rewarded. If he's lying, he'll stay arrested, and they're back to square one. Hank and Gomez agree and walk back in to sit down, but only if it's contingent on arrest. I love how Hank and Gomez did this, pushing Saul and Crazy 8 to cut the bullcrap and jump straight to the point.
Contingent? On what?
Results. Mr. Molina will stay in custody while you verify his very specific, limited information.
And what if what he tells us doesn't pan out?
Oh, well, then he just stays here. We're back where we started. But
even though Lalo is technically setting up Gus successfully, so he's tricking them, which we'll get into in another video, I do think that Hank and Gomez won this confrontation against Saul and Crazy 8, which truly speaks to their characters. You know, they're not in the position they're in for no reason, and it also speaks for Saul as well, showing how much further of a ways he still has to go, because he didn't dupe them in 2004, but he ended up duping them in 2008 when he met with them again. Now, as I said, in order to get Hank and Gomez to sit back down, Saul has to agree that Crazy 8's information will lead to arrest. This is counterproductive in Saul's mind because in order to get one guy out, he has to get multiple other guys in. But this is the only way for them to get Hank and Gomez to cooperate, so Saul has no choice but to agree.
if his information leads to something...
Arrests.
What?
If his information leads to arrests.
Oh, yeah. Well, if his information leads to arrests, then charges go away. Okay, now how can you say no to that? That is a win-win for you guys.
Now, of course, Lalo is actually setting up Gus's operation here, so Saul isn't in trouble. This is actually what Lalo wanted all along.
They're gunning for arrests.
Okay.
But In this moment, Saul doesn't know that, and he does think that he's in trouble. He thinks that he screwed up and lost the fight.
Mission failed. We'll get him next time.
This is obviously a tough pill to swallow in the moment because Saul is so scared that Lalo won't be happy with Crazy 8's information, leading to more arrests. In Saul's eyes, he's moving 1 step forward and 2 steps back. But little does Saul know, Lalo actually set up Gus, so the dead drops are being handled by Gus's men. So in Lalo's eyes, it's a win-win.
That is a win-win for you guys.
Lalo gets his guy Crazy 8 out, and Gus's guys get arrested along with Gus's money taken. Now, once Hank and Gomez finally sit back down to gather information off of Crazy 8, Saul stops them one more time. Hank understandably complains, wondering what now, but this part is important.
All I know is that there are these 3 dead drops they run on Thursday nights.
Hold on.
What? What Saul is going to ask here turns out to be the entire end goal of his plan. Saul wants Hank and Gomez to protect Crazy 8's identity as a snitch, and in return, he'll continue to be an informant for them. This is obviously a huge Breaking Bad Easter egg, explaining how Crazy 8 became an informant for Hank and Gomez during Breaking Bad. Now, during Breaking Bad, this is a very minor piece of information. We only briefly hear Hank and Gomez speak about this after Crazy 8's death during Breaking Bad, but the show creators took that small piece of information from Breaking Bad and turned it into much more.
You know what I'm thinking, Gomez?
Yeah, somebody croaked our snitch.
Tuco Salamanca. I'd say he is a prime suspect in the disappearance of our dearly missed Crazy 8. Hats over your heart for that dirtball.
We all took one for questioning on that one, but as usual, we couldn't make a stick.
Yeah, he runs a tight ship, smug bastard. Say hello to Domingo Gallardo Molina, a.k.a. Crazy 8. Way smarter than your average cheese eater. I turned him out when he was street level, but this dude's like the Jeffersons, moving on up.
The creators of Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul really love Crazy 8's actor, so they really wanted to appreciate the character's role and give him a larger role in Better Call Saul, which is great. I really enjoy Crazy 8 in Better Call Saul, and I actually might do a character spotlight on him at some point. It's just, I'm kind of holding off on the character spotlights until season 6 is finished because I don't want to do a definitive character spotlight before the show is over, because then a whole season will come out and we might get more information that I wish that I would have put in the spotlight video. But yeah, I really enjoy Crazy 8's character, and he's definitely one of the people that I'm going to do a full video about in the future at some point once the show's over. And I'll also without a doubt eventually do a Hank spotlight video as well, but that'll be a much bigger video.
Oh, simmer down there, Sparky.
But just to give a quick summary and circle back to what I was saying, no pun intended, but it's crazy to think how much they've elaborated on Crazy 8's character, and that Walt just had to mess everything up. So Saul makes sure that Crazy 8 will continue to be Hank and Gomez's private confidential informant. This means that anytime in the future that Crazy 8 gets picked up by the cops, Crazy 8 calls Saul, Saul calls Hank, and then they figure it out from there, no questions asked. This most likely implies that whenever Crazy 8 gets picked up or caught by the cops in the future, he'll have to use his ability as a confidential informant to rat out other drug dealers in order to not have to do time himself. This plays into the story that we know from Breaking Bad, where Crazy 8 eventually became his own independent dealer and that he ratted out multiple other drug dealers in order to reduce competition and steal their customers. Even his own cousin Emilio, who was the other antagonist from the pilot episode of Breaking Bad, passed out in the RV. And in the pilot episode, Crazy 8 actually accused Jesse of snitching on Emilio just so Crazy 8 could try and cover his tracks.
Emilio. He thinks maybe you dimed on him.
Whoa, hey, that is bullshit.
You lost your partner today. What's his name? Emilio?
Every small-time dealer he'd throw at us, he'd end up snaking all their customers.
Now it turns out that he's missing, presumed dead. Found his car out in the boonies. Last guy he ratted out was none other than his cousin, Emilio Koyama.
You thinking the cousin found out and took revenge?
Could be. Turns out he's missing too.
And the reason why Crazy 8 gets away with this is because Hank and Gomez cover it up. So Emilio never found out that Crazy 8 ratted him out. Now I actually have a lot more to say in regards to Lalo setting up Gus and his dead drops with Hank's second cameo, but let's not get too ahead of ourselves. I'm actually planning on saving a bunch of Gus, Lalo, and Hank a dead drop talk for a future episode 504 Hank discussion breakdown.
Let me ask you something.
Do you think that dead drop talk sounds like it could be a great podcast name, or is that just me?
Doesn't matter.
Anyway, since this video is getting pretty long in length, with Hank and Gomi having cameos in 2 episodes for Better Call Saul Season 5, it makes sense to split up the discussion into 2 videos. Since we've discussed everything involving Hank and Gomi in episode 503, in my next Hank and Gomez video we'll be breaking down everything involving them from episode 504, and that includes Lalo's scheme to screw over Gus. And just so you know, my 504 Hank and Gomez breakdown won't be coming out immediately after this video.
You'll make time.
It won't be my next video. I think my next video is probably going to be another Gene theory breakdown video, so get hyped for that.
Rest in peace, Gene.
But the 504 Hank and Gomez breakdown will most likely be uploaded about 3 videos from now. I'd appreciate a like on the video if you've enjoyed anything that I've said today, and if you're new here or just haven't yet already, please subscribe and hit that bell notification to be updated on whenever I post new content on Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad. But on that point, I was looking at the analytics for my Gus Fring video the other day, which, by the way, thank you so much for all the support for that, but there's actually a new thing, or new to me, that I noticed in the analytics.
Okay. Show me.
Where you can see the amount of people that have the bell notification turned on and the amount of people that actually clicked on the video from the bell notification. So that'd be really cool if we can get that number up. I don't know, I just think that's really interesting. Oh my god, I just broke up the middle of my outro to just ramble on about something crazy, right?
What?
As always, I thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, I'll talk to you guys later. Peace out.
Wow me. Make my tiny eyes grow wide with delight. It's all good, man.
Looks like you're looking at a rock at 2:24 in the morning.
This is not a rock. This is a mineral for like the 10th time.